two when I lived in Japan with a Japanese family and studied in Seto with a traditional Japanese potter as an apprentice. And I was 17 years old, so I'm not that old. His name was, in Japanese, it's Suzuki Seisei. In our way, it's Seisei Suzuki. He was quite a famous potter. It was a small pottery in the mountains. There was his two sons. His wife mixed the glazes, and another apprentice who was learning, and me. And I was, well, at that time there were only two foreigners in the town of Seto, me and another man from the Netherlands, and I was the first woman who had ever interned there. So I was only 17, so it had a lot of influence on my aesthetic life for the rest of my life. I went back to America and went to college and majored in biology and art, so I have an interest in living things as well as art. And then I became a textile designer in New York City. And it really influenced my textile design. And so these principles that I'm going to talk to you about are the basis for traditional Japanese art, not the really modern stuff that's happening now, which is about manga and pop art and all of that. It's more the traditional ceramics, and I'll show you lots of examples. So if you know how pottery got to Japan in like I don't know what years, maybe 1400s and 1500s, pottery had sort of migrated, traditional pottery, from China to Korea and then from Korea to Japan. So basically, the emperor sent people over to Korea to learn to make pottery for the court. And then that was very Chinese based. It was very kind of traditional Chinese looking, multicolored, pretty symmetrical. And then in 70s, the tea ceremony was invented in a Buddhist monastery in Kyoto, and the Buddhist monk who invented the tea ceremony, as it is still done today, wanted different kind of tea bowls, not these Chinese looking ones, for the tea ceremony. And he commissioned various potters to do something different that was more based on nature, more based on Zen Buddhism, and much more natural looking. And that's sort of the basis of Japanese pottery to this day, traditional Japanese pottery. And those are the principles. So I'm going to show you different examples of the different principles. So does anyone know what the word asymmetrical balance means?
One side. What? Asymmetrical what?
Balance.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so if you draw something, I don't know where the chalk is. If you draw something, and here's a pot. You divide a design down the middle, and you put the same thing here and the same thing here. That's symmetry, right? Mm-hmm. So if you put one up here and one down there, that's asymmetry, the opposite. Okay, and Japanese pottery is based a lot on asymmetry. So they do not balance things down a central line. They use odd numbers of motifs, so you see 3. They use like 3, 5, or 7 of things, whereas sort of Western, we sort of balance everything out more than they do. And when they lay out a design like this one, they just sort of scatter things around haphazardly. I mean, there's not like, let me plan this out and measure. That's not what it's
It always
about.
looks like that.
It doesn't, it doesn't. It's just there, it's graceful, but it's not symmetrical, right?
Can we turn the lights
That
off?
my dad owns, that I sort of grew up with, so it's attached to it. Okay, then the next principle I want to talk about is texture. There's a lot of contrasting textures in the same piece. So it wouldn't be like you just like dip it in glaze and have it all be one shiny, equal thing. So I try that in my pieces, like I have shiny parts and matte parts. And this is a raku from the raku family in Kyoto. They are the 16th generation of the raku family that makes tea bowls for the tea ceremony in Kyoto. And you can see that they leave some of the bowl unglazed. They have some shiny parts, some matte parts. Also, I'll talk more about tea bowls, but basically they're hand formed and the kind of randomness of life is imbued in them. It's about that day and how he touched that bowl. And it's about how nature is imperfect. So you can see that that's not a perfectly round tea bowl. And it has the impression of his hands, and they make it one day and decorate it the next. And they're individually fired, but I'll talk more about that. So there's the idea of contrasting textures. I don't know if these are really in the order I put them, hang on. So here's another example of this asymmetry. We went out to dinner in Kyoto, this is how they set the table. Every plate is different. Can you see that? The chopsticks are not oriented all the same even when they set the table. Can you see that?
Like that.
Yeah, you like that? I like that too.
Personality.
And even though it's a round plate, it's not a round design, right? It's not made to fit the circle. It's just painted on there. Okay, so I want you to see that in terms of asymmetry. So these are more traditional, kind of all over glazed porcelain pieces, but you can see that the design is not put on there like evenly, symmetrically. It's sort of floated on there, and it's kind of randomly placed. Does everybody see that? Okay. I love those pieces, but that's a celadon with a blue underglaze, but it's not like a traditional, like a Chinese or a Korean even, blue underglaze design that would cover the whole thing or would have a band around it. It's looser, right? Okay, the next one I did. Okay, now I'm going to go back to texture because that was the next category. This piece is absolutely gorgeous. Okay, so isn't it gorgeous? They have shiny inside. They've left the marks of the wheel. You see those grooves that they didn't smooth away? And this is actually white slip, and then it's black slip on top on the outside, and then all black on the inside. But it's very random. Okay, same here. This is a traditional from Mino, which is in the mountains above Seto, where they do a lot of, you say oribe, we say oribe in Japan, work, and they don't like dip the whole thing in the green glaze, if you know what I mean. So there's parts in the center part where it's the white clay showing with clear glaze, that is got like the canvas pressed into it as a texture. Can't really see it that well on here. Maybe we can zoom a little. I don't know if it's gonna let me. It's not. Anyway, and then they've also used iron oxide and sort of connected those corners that are green. And so even though it's a square piece, the design of it is not at all square. Okay, next one. All right, then there's this concept in Japanese pottery called, well, I don't know how to translate it. It translates really as like a moment in time. When you decorate a pot, it's about that day, that place, that piece of clay, and you, and what happened. Get it? It's not like, oh, I always make such and such. And a lot of time it's like a sketch. So these plates, I love them because they're sort of like just a quick sketch of a landscape, right? With the willows or whatever those are in the foreground.
It's like pussy willows in the winter.
Yeah. Oh, and seasons are really important. Like, they have certain foods for every season, like, and they have certain dishes for every season. And like, if it was a winter scene, they would use those plates in the winter. They have different futon covers for the seasons. Everything is based on what's going on outside. Whatever happened that day happened, and it's accepted. Okay, so maybe he made some cuts in the sides of this thing, and maybe it just collapsed from the weight of those wings or whatever, but it's not like it went to the dump as a reject, right? It was like, that was that day, that potter with that piece of clay.
He got his hands in there and just separated to see what would happen.
Yeah, and it was in a very fancy gallery with that one camellia. Here's another one of this same artist. I love his work. So in the same with how they portray nature, it's a lot of it is stylized, and it's just how it happened that day. This is like completely unplanned. Oh, I'm gonna put flower A here, flower B here, you know. It's just like, okay, pick up the brush and go. So a lot of spontaneity. Okay, so this screen was made purposely on silver leaf because they knew it would tarnish. So it changes with the passage of time. Get it?
That's cool.
Isn't that cool? That's like a really hard concept, but
So
it's
much for
amazing.
in the moment.
It
But
is in the moment.
It is in the
of that
moment.
day.
It's coming with us to the moment. You know what I mean? And also you can see the asymmetry. No two bamboos are alike. They're not lined up in any way. It's really interesting. And basically when there's examples of how they portray time, this is like one of those prime things they always put in the book. Because it's amazing. And so they would never try to clean this or, you know, like silver polish or whatever. It's about time.
So is anything that's like the black or gray, the actual silver and the
Yeah, all that
is
background, you
painted?
can see the squares. You know how you put gold leaf on in squares?
Yeah.
The silver leaf was put on in
That's
squares.
really cool.
It is cool. The concept is amazing. Okay, and then in terms of nature is the number one thing that they portray, and I have a few other examples. So they don't, you know, like try to make the perfect flower or the perfect river. It's about like the feeling of the river. You know what I mean? Like this piece of fabric, actually this piece of woven silk, is about springtime and the river flowing. It's not really like what we would do as a realistic picture of the river. It's more about the impression of the river, and it's very stylized. So most of, the other thing is that's very interesting in Japanese art is that because they were interested in like time and change, they portray things that are old and falling down and decayed. So like a Western painting would probably paint like a much healthier tree, right? And also the asymmetry, and also those birds are all in groups of 3. So it's odd numbers, asymmetry, and the changing nature of nature is more important than, you know, like trying to depict it realistically. It's that life is just always changing. I thought, in terms of that, this is an incredible Japanese garden. One of the top 3 gardens in Japan is in Kanazawa. It's called Kenroku-en. And the trees there are like hundreds of years old. In America, they would cut them down and plant new ones. Here, they have these guys who come and put the poles so that they live for like hundreds of years, even though they're like sideways. So nature is revered no matter its age. The fact that it's aging is like part of the beauty of it. Whereas we're always like cleaning things up and making them symmetrical, if you know what I mean. Okay. This tree is not being allowed to fall down over this lake. So I'm going to show you some other depictions of nature and how the look of it is very stylized. And in my work, those of you who saw some of the floral work that I do, it's very stylized. And also in this piece, which is a little dark, this shot, but the background is not completely covered up. They let the color of the clay show through. It's got those brush strokes of iron oxide, and then it's got this giant flower. Okay, and then this whole idea of letting the clay show, very important. I try to always leave some naked clay, and the potter that I worked for, he never covered the whole pot. And when they make a tea bowl, the tradition is that they don't glaze the bottom like quite a ways up, because they want the material to show. What it's made of is really important. So there's a lot of pots that if they're going to hold water, they'll glaze the inside, but the outside, they want them to be like rough, like it came from the earth and this is what it is. I'm not hiding that. I'm not trying to make it pretty. I'm just having it be. That's very prevalent. This is Bizen pottery. I don't know if any of you know the 6 ancient kilns of Japan, but Bizen, everything is wood fired, and these big pots are fired on their sides. And they are stilted, like we would use kiln stilts. They use seashells, which then often stick to the pot. So one side usually has, this is the wrong side, but the other side probably has 2 or 3 seashells adhered where they melt slightly and they attach themselves to the pot.
That's fun.
Yeah. They also, like this circle, it represents the moon. They're very into the moon. Like in ancient times, the emperor, you would be invited to like one of his villas for a moon viewing, and they had platforms out at night where you'd sit and look at the moon, especially the full moon. So what they do is they take a thrown bowl, and when this is put into the wood kiln, that part where the circle is protected so that the fire doesn't get to it. So that's the moon, and then they take that off after the firing.
How would they protect it?
They would protect it from the fire with just like they have these little instead of it being sitting in a sagger, they have put like a little dome sagger on that part that they want to be the moon.
Gotcha.
And also the glaze is dripping sideways because this thing was fired on its side. So it's like, in Bizen they also wrap in the grass that grows there. I don't know what kind of grass it is right now, but so you get a lot of organic material that sort of melts into the clay in the wood firing. It's really gorgeous stuff. This is a piece that, I grew up with this piece in my house. It comes from Sato, and you can see I'm very into leaves. It's got a huge influence on me, and one of the influences, not that it's just leaf shaped, but it's got all those veins of the leaves, which I create with my stamps, you'll see, and also that it's not fully glazed. I mean, there's a little bit of oribe on this corner here, and then the rest is left with the color of the clay plus some clear glaze. If it's going to be used for food, they'll put clear glaze on the inside. A lot of times they won't bother if it's like a vase or something and it's not going to be eaten out of. This is another one I love. This is another one where the edges of the piece are left unglazed, and the clay all along the edge and the back is showing, and the glazing is just sort of happening in the center. Okay, then I'm going to talk about one more thing, the power of 5. Where is that? So 5 is a very important number. I don't know if it is in Chinese art, but it is in Japanese design and art. And all ceramics are sold in sets of 5. okay? And, so if you wanna buy a set of pottery, you have to buy 5. That's just the way it is. They'll make 5 of something. Okay, so there's not a lot of reasons for this. It really, it's very interesting. Okay, I'm gonna explain it to you. And it has to do with eating too. Usually a meal in Japan is rice plus 4 dishes, which equals 5. Okay, and they are usually, a balanced meal has 5 colors: black, white, which could be beige like rice, black, white, red, green, and yellow. And you'll get good nutrition and a balanced meal if you have those 5 things. The white is the rice, and then the other 4 things. So like when I lived with this Japanese family, they had 2 daughters besides me and the mother who would plan the meals. And you know, like if there wasn't something red, they'd get a radish and they'd cut it up, and that would be the 5th dish, because it had to be, that's the way it had to be. That just was it. And I was the 6th person in that family. When they make rice in the morning in a rice cooker, and then at every meal you have some rice. When they would make the meal, they would make, before I came, there were 2 daughters and the parents, so there were 4 bowls of rice plus a 5th one they would put in this little Shinto shrine for their ancestors in a tiny bowl. Okay, so I made it 6, which is an even number, which is very bad. So they made 7 bowls, and they put 2 for the ancestor every day, because they didn't want it to be 6. And the reason even is unlucky is because it could be split, and that bad luck, it would split the family. It would split. It's considered not a good thing for anything to be even. It should be an odd number, and 5 is the best number. So where is that power of 5? It's very interesting, I find it. Okay, so also, there's 5 senses, right? I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Anyway, so, and a meal should appeal to all those 5 senses. Like something should be crunchy so you can hear it, or the soup should be slurpy, so you slurp when you drink soup there so you can hear it. And it should be beautiful. I mean, so it's very important that it appeals to every sense. And I said the 5 food groups, you know, the 5 colors of food, which actually they've done studies, scientific studies, and it's a very healthy way to eat. To have a yellow something, a green something, a red something, a white something. And well, black is also brown because they have the...
Oh, then the brown is okay because it's for chocolate.
Anyway, so that's the story of the power of 5, and I think I got, where'd I get? So if you go to like any gallery and they lay out a set of something, of tea bowls or of rice bowls or of anything, and you always see 5 of them. Washoku is the Japanese way to set up a meal. So there are 5 colors. They like to use 5 cooking methods, 5 different tastes: salty, sour, sweet, bitter, and spicy, and 5 things on the tray. And if you ever owned a bento box, they have 5 compartments. It's interesting. Anyway. It's interesting.
4's are not a bad number, particularly bad in Japan.
Anything that you could split in half, which is like breaking something and ruining it, is considered bad, not good. I wouldn't say it's superstition, it's just the way it is. Just, the way life is. It's based on odd numbers. So, like, this has 3 leaves on it. If I put 4 on it, it would not be as pleasing in Japan. Right? Okay, what's my next thing? Did that. Okay, so then some of you are doing raku, so I thought I'd explain, what the raku origins are a little bit. So the raku family is on the 16th generation since the first raku master made a tea bowl for the Sen no Riku, who is the man who created the tea ceremony. So raku, I don't know what his name is, something, the 16th is the one who's making the tea bowls for the imperial family and for the Buddhist monasteries and everything now. But he had to go through like a training in ceramics to take over from his father. So, and that raku, which they call raku there, is only that family's tea bowls. It's not what we call raku here. American raku and Japanese raku are like very different. The only thing that overlaps is the method of firing, because they make these raku tea bowls and they're individually fired in a little kiln that looks like a toaster oven sized, kind of a domed kiln, and they heat them up to red hot, they take them out, they put them in a special container, and they put sawdust. That's how they get that very black that they have in them. So that is how we got this name, to call anything that you take out and reduce with a foreign material raku. American raku is basically that technique. But in Japan, they don't call it raku. They don't call that technique raku. They don't know what we're talking about, really, because raku is a family and raku is a tradition of tea bowls. And they also make water jars for the tea ceremony. So it's very interesting that we've developed this whole thing that it's not really Japanese. Okay. So this is a little history of it. You don't need to know, but they're on the 16th generation, and since 1573, father to son, they've been making tea bowls.
No daughters, huh?
No, not yet. There are more daughters in Japanese pottery than in the old days. Like a lot of times, like when you visit a kiln or a pottery now, the daughter is who took over. And there's quite a few very famous Japanese women who are potters, but it didn't used to be that way. But that's the way of the world. It has improved. Okay. So I was going to show you the stages. Is this the one? No, it's this one. Okay, so to achieve mastery as a potter in Japan, you have to go what's called shuhari, which is a concept where shu is where you do everything exactly like your master. Like that's the training part. Okay, that's what I did. He'd make something in the morning. I'd make 20 of them all day long. He'd come back in the afternoon, he'd squash them all, or squash everything but one, and I did that for 6 months. Basically, maybe 2 different forms over 6 months.
Did you get any better as time went by? Did he
Definitely
squish
got
less?
back. I could do it in my sleep now. Just ask me to make a cup or anything for sake I could make in my sleep. But so you go through that stage, and then you get to break, like not do what the master says, and usually they send you to another pottery. So like the son of the potter I worked with was sent to like another potter in Seto to break the tradition of the father. So they want you to move on
Interesting.
and change. And then once you've done, and he was there for 7 years.
It's one way to break that.
And then you get to the re-stage where you are a master, you can do anything you want, you can open your own pottery, and I don't know how old you have to be to get that. It's called, and re means to leave or transcend or to separate. So, and basically, innovation, to become like a potter who gets to show in Kyoto in the Niten, which is the biggest exhibition of ceramics every year, you have to develop something new. So it's like about innovation, trying something new. Some of them go to other countries and to the Middle East and learn different glaze techniques, and they're always trying. It's sort of like our art, like it's got to be new and different. But so they have to break away. They can't just do what the daddy did, which is interesting. And also, when they reach this mastery stage, they've also reached like the Zen stage, where they can get into this zone of being like attached to the clay and in a transcendent state. Which, it's really hard. is really hard to do. So I'm gonna show you, this is the work of the 15th who retired and his son just took over in 2019. These are the highest form of tea bowl in Japan. This is the real raku. This is the 15th master.
Is it a pinch pot?
Actually, no. They take a circle of clay. It's more like a disc, okay? Then they take a little pounding piece, like that's the center size or a little, and they pound out the middle. And they don't really scoop, they pound, and then they put their hands on it and start like removing and shaping. Then after it's like leather hard, they turn it over and they carve the foot by hand. It's very interesting. I have to find you a video. There's videos of them working on YouTube.
How thick would you say the starting disc is?
The starting disc is the ones I've seen are, but winter
Oh, so
tea
it's
bowls.
substantial.
Yeah, winter tea bowls are deeper than summer tea bowls. You change in the seasons. Winter is so you can warm your hands because it's freezing. So they will have to be big enough to put your hands all the way around. And summer tea bowls, you want it to cool so you're not so hot. So they're more open and spread out, and they're shallower. Dave.
So that's still not food safe, right?
Well, it's tea safe to them.
Well, that's food safe, isn't it?
I mean, I wouldn't put like tomato juice or something acidic, but, and also the center has to be big enough. You know, they use that brush to stir the matcha. So it has to get to a certain size where that brush will go in. And
So the difference would be the glazes. Would it be the temperature or the glazes?
they only use like a black, a white, and a red. And then they leave some of the clay naked, like this circle on there, which is a moon, is clay showing. And the black they develop with what we would call the raku technique. They take it out of the kiln and put the sawdust over it and have it.
How does the clay show in reduction?
It shows the black is the mud from the Kamo River in Kyoto, and it's actually ground. They take not the mud, the stones. They take the stones from the river and they pound them and grind them. That's how they make the black clays.
There's no clear glaze on those?
No,
Interesting.
no, and they don't do colors. There's another one. Texture, you can see the texture. Sometimes they, I think, beat it up. Some of them, you can see carving marks where they've cut off sections with a knife. They can use a knife, but most of them are with the hands. And here's the one I showed you where they left the whole rim unglazed. So they're very irregular, and that's because it's about that artist, that day, that time. And they also name them all. Every one of these masters, every bowl they made had a name.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
No, they have names, and you couldn't get out a book. You can get a book, and you can see this master, the 12th, and his, 40 famous tea bowls, and they each have a name. It's like revered. We're talking like really famous. Anyway, so that's my presentation. Workshop last year, I carved them out of this flexible rubber. It's a replacement for linoleum block printing, and I stamped them into the clay. I also use a lot of like texture mats. I don't have them all with me. These are some that belong to the studio. I glob on slip. Do a lot of different things. So I'm gonna do, I've made 3 things to decorate, so you get an idea of like what these principles are and how they occur. And I also took out some underglazes. Where'd I put them? Over there. Oh, okay. So if you want to use underglazes, they're here. And I took out the Japanese 5 colors. One of the things that's very interesting is that blue is not included in the traditional 5 colors. Blue is considered like more of an export or a Chinese porcelain color. It's not an art pottery color. So like the blue underglaze that you see that comes from Japan, beautiful blue and white pottery, which is a cobalt underglaze under a white porcelain glaze, is considered more of an export product, not like the art. Same with Imari. If you've probably heard of Imari, it's like red, gold, and blue primarily, and it covers the whole plate, and it's pretty symmetrical. That is also considered an export product, not like a daily life Japanese product. So they use black, white, green, red, and yellow in like art pottery. Part 1. So you can come up and look at these if you want. There's one in the window too. So I was going to sort of do this one first. So basically, I rolled out a slab, and it's very hard for me to talk when I do this because I sort of get into the zone of like design. And I have baggies of all these things. I have baggies. And in back east where I live in the winter, in the summer, I've probably made 50 or 60 of these different stamps, and I have them all over the studio. So but I only bring like 5 or 6 here. So kind of been trying to figure out what I was going to do beforehand, but I'm not sure. Okay, so I also use a lot of like stamps, and there's these little Japanese, where are they? They carve, you can buy it in a pottery supply store, these rods of plaster, uncarved, and then you carve the end. You can make stamps, and so I have a few of those that are like old favorites that I tend to use. Okay, so this was just a pool noodle, round, slab rolled around the pool noodle, and then I reached from the inside and changed the shape a bit. And I'm going to add some flowers. I don't know if this is going to come out like with people watching. So this actually belongs to the studio, but I have the exact same one at home. This is like 5 petals. And whenever they portray the cherry blossom, they always do it with 5 petals, because that's lucky. And I usually like something in the middle, and then it pops up in the press, and I have my cherry blossom. And then I'm going to make a few of those, and then I'm going to talk to you about like why I'm putting them where I'm putting them, and then I'll do some color. I don't think I'll get 3 things decorated tonight, but so if I'm going to put these on, am I going to put 2 or am I going to put 3? 3.
Or 5.
After a while, it gets to be like a habit. You don't even think about it. You think, oh, that doesn't look good because Steven. Okay, so then I'm going to think about like where do I want these, and I'm going to probably scratch and attach them on here someplace. And I hate to do all this scratching and attaching in front of you, but and
Don't anybody breathe.
so I kind of make my spots. This is not like, I usually plan a lot more than this. This is kind of ad hoc. And this was made today, so it's a little less than leather hard. I don't add attachments once you get too dry. Can't do it bone dry, even if it's spray. Gotta be, gotta be in the leather stage. Still, don't let it get too dry. And if you do, and you end up, something's too dry and you want to add something to it, don't just spray the part where you're going to add, because the rest of it will suck that water away from there. You got to wet the whole thing and get back to where you can. Okay, so I got this thing going on here. And I usually go on the inside and give it a good.
Did the family you study with harvest their own clay?
Seto has clay deposits. That's the 6 kilns of Japan were all happened where there was clay. And actually there's a close to porcelain. It's not really porcelain, but they add some things into it to get it to be almost porcelain. There's a close to porcelain white clay. That's why Seto's known for blue and white export porcelains. But yeah, there's clay deposits there. So they have a lot of cooperatives. So in Japan, if you go to a pottery town, there's usually a clay person, a clay seller, who is selling the clay to everybody. And it's usually local. Like the clay in Shigaraki is very crystally. It has a lot of quartz in it. Clay in Seto is not so rough. You know, everybody's clay is different. And also they create a clay body of different clays according to how they're going to fire it. So if they're going to fire it in a wood kiln, it's got to be able to hold up to that. So basically in Seto, you go to like 2 or 3 different companies and get clay right there in town. And if you go out of town, you can see an entire mountainside that's white that has been dug with like major equipment for the last 100 years. It's just what they call their porcelain. There's a deposit there, and then there's just like the trucks running around and backhoes and digging this mountain away. So it's pretty interesting. Okay, so I got something there. I usually also work on a banding wheel. I don't bring one over, but I can. And I try to keep turning and looking at it, seeing what I think, where I think the next thing should go. And it's a process of you and that piece and today and your mood and, right? It's the same as glazing. You can go to that glaze area and you're in a crappy mood. You get a crappy pot, right? So I don't want it to be up. I'm kind of thinking like down in here, maybe something else, and I'm not sure it should be in more of these flowers. Maybe it should be a leaf. I'm just going to start this one, and then I'll probably finish it tomorrow. And I'll show you how to do a little color. So this is a leaf, and if you didn't see this before, I usually put these down and I hit them because if you roll them, I don't know, it stretches the clay. But if you go straight down, everything away from the edge, yes. If you go straight down, you can not only get the middle, but you can get a pretty good impression. And then you cut it out. I'm not doing like the greatest job because I'm sort of rushing. So now I don't put these on flat. I kind of like take my finger and wrinkle them up a little, and I decide where they're going to go. This is kind of big compared to those. I don't know if this is going to work. I don't want to lose that. Anyway, so that's sort of, and then I might like just sit this here and like turn and decide if that's what happens, if I like what's happening in relation to that, or do I want it more over, and then what it looks like from this side. And I would probably put like a third little grouping on here, 3 or 5. I mean, they're basically, you follow the principles, it works. And I like things that like have movement, so I don't put anything on flat, except sometimes I'll put the moon on flat, because, I don't know, I think it's so far away in the sky it wouldn't be wrinkled, right?
Nothing like a wrinkled moon.
Yeah, so with these, I decide where it's gonna go, and I have to figure out what is actually gonna touch the pot and what isn't. So I kind of do these indications of where I should scratch. And then I hold it in my hand, and I scratch only where those places that it touched the pot are. I don't even know if I'm gonna like this tomorrow, but we'll see. If you keep it wet, you could always change it. Okay, so I know I have to get the bottom of that and the tip of this. And then in terms of glazing and coloring, I do a lot of things with a squirt bottle. I don't know if you've seen any of those pieces, but I drip things. I try to leave the clay naked in some places, and sometimes I only glaze the inside. I just let it be natural. I'll show you something else I do with newspaper. They almost, in the pottery I worked in, they almost never used a brush. So it was either, they used kind of a dipper, like we would ladle out soup. So they used a dipper with like a round with like a pouring spout, and they'd hold the pot and just pour in different places. I use a squirt bottle, I think I have more control, but they used a dipper. And sometimes they had a, like, I don't have one here, but a metal container like our fooers, these things, a metal thing like this, but it has a long skinny spout, and they would just pour in certain spots. But very little, like 100% coverage. Okay, I can clean this all these edges up later. I just want to get this on for now. So that's 2 things are on here. And then I don't know what's the third one is going to be. But the other thing is you don't have to go out a ways, you could go in. Like I could get down here instead of having another thing attached. I could come in here with some impressions, you know. And maybe add later some little leaves around this. That's one. Then this one, I took a round, not really round, a oddly shaped circle of clay, a regular circle, and I stamped into it the leaves 3 times in a circle, and then I gradually got it to go into this pot. So that, I do that a lot. And then I also, like this, I use like 3 little bowls, and I sat them in 3 little bowls, and then I connected them. So I do a lot of things with those leaves. And I don't use, I mean here, because this glaze breaks, you know what I mean by breaks, it's different by thickness. Where it's thick, it's black. Where it's thin, it's brown. I'm okay with covering the whole thing. I try to do like something that's gonna not be consistently, like I wouldn't just dip this in green. I like to like change up.
Carmen, the one that's in the blue bowl, so
Yes.
when you take that out, don't you have little lines from the plastic on it? And when you do
I
that-
take a, like once, tomorrow, let's say, I take a piece of foam and I put it in here, and then I put it on a higher banding wheel and I flip it, and then while it's supported by this foam, I either smooth out the back, or if I liked it, I leave the texture of the plastic. Sometimes I put a foot on it then, but I can't get it upside down until it's leather hard tomorrow. And at home, I have like all kinds of sponges. I just like fill it up with sponges, and I stick the banding wheel upside down on there, and do the flip.
It's like an omelet chef.
Yeah. Don't, you do a lot of that in
Yeah.
pottery, the flip. Okay, then in terms of color, something I do, I've wrote it out in newspaper, something I do in terms of like, how to decide like what should be glazed and what it shouldn't be, is like I tear newspaper and this is kind of too regular. And I
Finally, a good use for the newspapers around here.
and I dip it in water. And I stick it on there in different, and then I'll like paint an underglaze, and then I peel off the newspaper. So I get irregularity of where the glaze is. You can do it with underglaze, you can do it with glaze. With glaze, if any of you've watched me glaze these pieces, I use wax a lot. Like I'll do the leaves of color, this is a celadon leaf, then I'll wax it, then I'll dip part of the pot, and then I'll drip. And they look sort of like waxy, weird things when they get to the shelf. So I might do this and have it stop down here somewhere. And then like do another one on an angle, so it's not like, I don't want it to feel like regular. And then I'll take an underglaze, see what these are like. Did have some brushes out. I'll take an underglaze and I'll get, these are beautiful, whoever put these in here, they're so smooth. I'll get that torn edge, you know. And then when this dries, you can peel this off and it'll feel like ripped paper instead of like you did it with a ruler. You want the weirdness. Might go on here too. And you know, it's a mood thing. If you're in the mood to do it that way, you do it that way. And you don't like worry about it too much. And you see that's like turning around the pot. Here's another place. And you see what you get. Don't like it? You can, if it's leather hard, you can always like scrape it off with a metal grip if you hate it, or texture it with a metal grip. The other thing I do, where's that slip? Is this is going to be such a mush mush. Is I take a slip of the same clay and I'll make certain areas more textury, sometimes in a leaf shape. And so then when it's glazed later, there'll be some rough and there'll be some smooth. Get that? Okay. See what happens with that. Okay, so it's like a big soup there. In terms of this, I might underglaze each leaf a different color. Or I might just leave it and then later when I'm glazing, do some kind of a glaze that breaks or changes. I like chinos because they change. I like Tamacru.
Really fun.